All right. So while this webinar was initially promoted as for individuals who are living with advanced cancer, it really is an important topic for all of us, whether we're dealing with progressive illness or not, because unfortunately, uh, we all are built in terms of our bodies for obsolescence. I heard that phrase recently and I thought, oh, yes, that's very true. That's our mortality is we know that many people have died before us and that there will be more in the future, and we are part of that population and that human experience. So, as we think about this, we know that it's very difficult. Everybody thinks about death, but most of us just don't want to talk about it because it opens us up to the most tender parts of our lives and to those fears about things that we can't control, our deepest fears. So, in addition to having all of this cast a shadow across our life and our experience, we hope to provide a little more light on the subject and create a safe place and space to have this conversation because we know it's not going to be your last, or at least we hope not. And that death is a hard truth to carry. So we're going to step into that a bit and hopefully learn to accept that truth with wisdom, compassion, and resourcefulness. So before we begin, let's take a mindful moment. We know that this topic is difficult, so we really appreciate the courage that it took for you to be here with us. And before we begin, I'd like to do a little exercise with you so that it's something you can rely on that will help calm your nervous system as we thoughtfully approach this topic. So, a very simple technique is to put both hands on your heart and just breathe into that in terms of taking a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and then exhale longer than it took you to inhale. And feel your body relax with that. This is something we do automatically in times of stress. You might have noticed that when you have something happen that is especially intense, we often will put our hands on our heart. In addition, when we find our mind racing, another technique is to put our hand on our forehead and one on our heart. And again, do that same breathing where you inhale, hold for a moment, and then exhale for a longer count than when you inhaled. And I encourage you to do this as often as you need to throughout the presentation. It's a way of taking care of your body, your mind, your spirit in all of this. So we know that it's hard to sit in this discomfort. We don't like to be reminded of our mortality. To most, death is one of those uncomfortable truths about life that we only tend to think about when we're faced with it. It's an abstract idea for which we have no personal lived experience other than through the loss of others. And so it takes a while for our brain and our heart to make sense of this. And contrary to what you might think, actually talking about it openly can provide some relief. And we're hoping that this presentation will help you find a reasonable level of comfort or at least a willingness to cover this topic and be present with it as we go forward. So as we do that, we'll discover that we can actually have the conversation without terrible things happening. I know it can be intense, tears might come, but we can actually get some relief or feel that relief as we acknowledge the impermanence of life and hopefully become more inspired to live with greater intention and purpose. So part of this experience involves anticipatory grief. It's a complex and normal part of this experience. It's not the same as grief felt after loss. And it's experienced by both the person with the terminal illness as well as those who survive them. It's the sorrow and other feelings we experience when a loss is anticipated or expected, and it occurs for everyone, especially those close to us. We're all trying to cope with it and the impact that it will have on our lives. So here are some things that are very common when we think about it. and also what we feel as we anticipate our own mortality. We take it personally as we live in two worlds of what feels normal and what feels surreal. So it's common to experience all of this and be able to live in that space of holding on to and letting go. That's a space in between. While it seems strange, it is possible to live with it, but within both at the same time. And you'll fluctuate, you'll find yourself moving back and forth between life feels normal to this is just not happening. It can't be happening. I don't want this to be happening. So your experience may include all of these things. And we encourage you to allow these emotions and these experiences to move through you because they are very normal. And it takes a lot of energy to hold all of that back and not allow yourself to experience it. So much of what comes with this experience is the uncertainty of it, and the fear, the intense anxiety about what it might be like. And once again, as we begin to talk about what that is for us, what we're afraid of, what is confusing, what do we wish we knew more about, it actually will help us begin to get the information we need and then move through this experience with a little more confidence and a sense of, I can do this. I can do this. So, ironically, it may seem odd to consider that anticipatory grief has any important benefits. You may have noticed some of them for yourself. Someone once said to me, having cancer and facing the end of my life was actually a gift in a nasty package because I got real, I got authentic. I actually began living my passions, not just my obligations. And that freed me up in a lot of ways. I just didn't tolerate things that were no longer of value or supportive to me. And so, as we allow ourselves to feel all of what this means for us, it actually creates more space for us to feel other things as well. So you may find that you're having to really confront your fears in ways that you hadn't considered before, hadn't wanted to before, and that you've allowed yourself to get support. You've also probably got busy doing things that you've put off for a long time, or helped family members really understand what you need better. Maybe you've not communicated that very well in the past. Maybe it's been time for you to settle differences and really talk to people that you've had some difficult relationships with. Being able to actually let go of some things and people that are not helpful or supportive to you anymore. And also this idea of how you connect with people through your stories, through your memories. And there's this concept called continuing bonds with regard to what about you that will remain with the people who care about you, that lets them stay connected with you even when you're not around. So what are those memories? What is it about you that they are going to hold on to even after you're gone? It also encourages us to actually prepare and plan. And we're going to talk a lot about that today with regard to what is there for you to do, because some of this grief and the anxiety is about, I don't know what to do. I feel overwhelmed. And so the sense of actually planning and preparing is going to help release some of that and help you move forward rather than feeling like you're stuck in this spiral of fear and uncertainty. So let's begin by actually talking about dying. That's what you came here to learn about, to understand for yourself, and deciding how you want to deal with it. How do you want to approach your own mortality or the mortality of people that you love and care about? So we're going to talk about evaluating what we believe about death and dying, how we learned it, what our spiritual perspectives offer us. Also, a little bit about healing our suffering. So we know that as we hold on to a lot of pain of the past and of what's happening currently, there's a lot of suffering And part of it is learning how to resolve or address some of that so that we feel more at peace. Of course, facing our greatest fears is a big part of that, and acknowledging what those feelings are and what's it like to care about someone who we can't control what's happening to them, and also communicating our wishes and teaching others through our experience, as well as reviewing what our life has meant and how it's mattered. So, what do we believe about death? Well, I will say that what we believe about it is going to affect how we experience it a great deal. So it affects how we face the end of our life. It affects how we give meaning to the experiences that we hold. And we discover too that some of the beliefs that we have are not very helpful. And these perceptions affect our experience as the illness progresses. However, the good news is that you have an opportunity to examine them, change them, modify them, learn, learn new insights, and be able to then have an experience that feels like it is more manageable and also more meaningful as we go forward. So these are some of the things that Sandra and I have often heard from people who are facing the end of their life. A lot of anger in terms of it's not fair. Also, the sense of somehow I didn't do something right. And so I've failed at my life because I should live longer. I've done all the right things. How could it be that this is happening? Sometimes people get angry with God, the sense that I've been a good person and I've done everything I needed to do that I thought would sort of earn me a long life. And somehow that's not happening. And especially if we have a belief that God will heal us and then it doesn't happen, we find that our illness still progresses or things are happening that we had hoped God would be able to mitigate or change for us. Sometimes we can yield to the idea that we'll be in a better place. We might be suffering a great deal and want to have some relief from that, and that people who feel like they are ready to release some of that and have had enough, that this actually can be a source of peace. Sometimes I hear from older folks that they're wondering why they live so long. And it's because life has become so hard that they really are ready to let go of this physical experience and move on to a sense of release. And so there are a number of these other topics that come to mind with regard to if we just work hard enough, we're going to be able to beat this, which doesn't take away that effort and that desire and that commitment. However, sometimes it can be disappointing that if even in our best efforts, sometimes it just doesn't work out the way we had hoped. And also, sometimes it's very freeing just to recognize that we will be free. And there is a sense of that if birth is a miracle, could death be a miracle too? So, taking some time to examine what you believe, what you've learned along the way, whether it's something you have taken on for yourself as your own belief and your own experience, or whether someone else is telling you how it should be, and that you have some challenges with, does that still fit? Does that fit for you? So, a lot of what is really helpful, I guess, in the sense of being able to resolve some of that anxiety is having a sense of what do I need to be doing? What's important now? So there's a lot on this slide, and we'll do our best to highlight the considerations for each category. But please keep in mind that the categories will overlap and not be depend on just one piece of this experience. So they're going to be interdependent. So, with that in mind, you may find yourself and your family considering different topics at different times. So, you may be focused on the what, and you have somebody else who's in your life who's really wanting to focus on other aspects in terms of what you need to do to prepare. So here we'll go over some of these things and allow yourself to explore other questions that might fit in these categories, some things that maybe we're not highlighting here, but that will be really important for you personally. So at the end of this presentation, we have some slides with resources in it. And there is one in particular, a link to a slide or a resource that says that's about end of life conversations can be hard, but your loved ones will thank you. And so that may be something you want to check out. So in terms of the what, everyone wonders, what will it be like? What will it be like, and how will I know that the end is near? So it may be a matter of having that discussion with your medical providers with regard to what it might involve for you, for your type of cancer. And it may be a matter of talking to professionals about what they understand. So hospice representatives or a chaplain will talk about some of the people that can help understand your question, as well as the resources that you might need to be able to address those questions. So the important thing is that you have choice. And there is a wonderful project called the Conversation Project that you can download and review online. It's both for you and the people who care about you, and we have a link to that at the end. That actually begins to bring forward those questions that will be important and probably are on your mind now. And this will help you communicate what your preferences and needs are. And then, of course, there's the logistical preparation with regard to advance directives. We're all asked about those every time we attend a medical appointment, or most often at least. Also, legacy projects which have to do with how do we want to be remembered? What do we want to leave behind in terms of what special things do we want to create? Like a quilt or a piece of art or something else that has meaning that we want to pass along to someone else in a way of remembering us in special ways. And of course, then there's the funeral planning and even writing your own obituary or helping someone else write it for you. And then also, who do you want to be with you in this experience along the way, as well as near the end? So there can be a variety of folks that you consider, and it gets to be your choice. It includes also palliative care, hospice, and a death doula, which isn't a common topic or a title that people are familiar with. Sandra, do you want to talk a little bit more about how palliative care, hospice, and a death doula might be helpful?
Sure, thank you. I obviously am a huge advocate for accessing palliative care. Kind of when someone's experiencing a serious or life-limiting illness, palliative care can be integral in working with your specialist, looking at symptom management and pain control, and getting more information about your disease. So when you enter into palliative care, that doesn't mean that you relinquish the care that you're already receiving. It runs parallel to the care you're receiving, and it's looking at managing the symptoms that could be pretty challenging as far as the treatment you're receiving. Also, palliative care does a really nice job of introducing information about your disease, helping you understand it. And research has indicated that people who enter into palliative care actually have a higher quality of life. Fewer individuals are less likely to die in hospital. Individuals are more knowledgeable about how they want the end of their life to look. So I think of palliative care as almost a coach to assist you to make some of those decisions, perhaps prior to entering into hospice care. And I'll just say one thing about hospice care. So many people believe or have the misunderstanding that hospice care is something that you do or you bring in or you go to in the last week. And by all means, Medicare covers hospice care at 100%. And hospice care serves people for 6 months or even longer. So I've certainly had patients in hospice care for a year at a time, and they have just received just bedside attention for that last year. And so I guess my point is I'd like to encourage people to give palliative care and hospice care kind of a shot at bat, because it can really lay a foundation of increased quality of life and understanding.
I I will also add that palliative care and hospice care both focus on quality of life and symptom management. So those are the things too that can be part of your decision with regard to what is it you need right now. What's most important for you right now? Often the question is, how do I know when I should move into hospice care? And that's really an individual discussion and decision, but it's based on what you value most in terms of the quality of your life. And as Sandra said, there actually are some studies that people live longer when they're in hospice care because their symptoms are managed so much better and that they have the ability to get the supportive care that is really most helpful at the time. Death doulas are essentially people who are trained sort of like uh, birth doulas with regard to walking along this experience in a very personalized way, one to one, with you as these needs become more apparent with regard to support. They help you advocate for yourself in the sense of what will help you be more comfortable, what really honors your needs and wishes.
This kind of food was I eating at home that Jared could bring?
Oh, so we are going to talk a little bit about choice. Uh, a lot of times we hear that providers may not be hearing you or addressing your needs in the way that you had hoped they would. And so it's really important for you to know that you can advocate for yourself. And if need be, you even have the choice often to change providers if you're really not getting what you need, especially at the end of life. Uh, Talking about pain management, any rituals that you might have, what your favorite things are, what roles people will have in your life as you face the end, and in terms of who will do what and how that might be managed. I had a friend who, as she was facing the end of her life, hired a musician because she wanted a certain kind of music being played, or you can ask for people to play it on, some kind of musical device of, radio, or I guess not many people listen to that anymore, but some kind of music on your playlist that's really important for you. And then, of course, medical aid in dying is a hot topic in Colorado, and a lot of people want to know about it and may not actually exercise it, but it is something that is available with regard to how you might proceed in those last months of one's life. So please know that it's a long process. It's not a decision that is made lightly or quickly. And so we'll include some resources at the end that help you understand more about what's required. Essentially, it's a physician agreeing that your condition is terminal, as well as undergoing an evaluation that you're making this decision thoughtfully and in the right frame of mind. And that you also have the ability to administer the medication yourself. It cannot be administered by someone else with regard to actually taking it's usually a combination of medications that slow your breathing and your heart rate to the point that it would stop. Also choice about how you want to be remembered in terms of, do you want a service? Do you want to have a memorial? Do you have someone in particular that you would like to do your or deliver your eulogy? And then is body donation important? One of the important things to know is that Colorado has some rules with regard to cancer patients being able to donate body parts because of how progressive the illness might have affected them. So that'll be something important for you to discuss as you go forward. And we have also a resource for you about that in terms of how to explore that with your medical team. And then, of course, where you want to be. Do you want to be home? Do you want to be in someone else's home or another place? And then, as far as hospice, it's important to know that most hospice services, the vast majority, is delivered in a home. There are some respite options at facilities, but those are time limited. And so you'll want to know that you're in a location and with people that can actually be with you a majority of time when you're not able to take care of yourself fully. Sandra, do you have anything else you want to add about the hospice limitations?
No, I think you mentioned it. I think generationally, there used to be a thought that when you're entering into hospice, you're going to a place. And that only takes place if your symptoms need to be managed at an acute level in an inpatient setting. So hospice is more, it's a method of care that comes to you. And so by all accounts, 30 to 50 years ago, it was a place to go, but any longer, hospice comes to you into your home.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And these are the people that actually can help you manage a lot of these decisions and be with you for these discussions. So we're talking about both the practical parts of it as well as the emotional part. So depending on the question that you might have, you want to be selective with regard to who can actually provide the kind of support and information you need. And are they able to manage their own feelings as you talk about these experiences? Now, we know that facing the end of life is intense for everyone, both the person who is dealing with an advanced illness as well as people who are with them. And so it's not unusual to cry together. And sometimes there aren't any words that take away the experience, but to be able to have people we trust that can be with us so we know that we're not alone and can hold the experience with you. And sometimes that's hard because we have people around us who want to fix it or take it away or tell you how you should feel something other than you're feeling. And often we find that's not very helpful. So when you approach this topic with others, consider who you can rely on to help you face your fears, as well as feeling like someone that can support you through the experience, even when it gets really hard. So try to find someone who can really listen, who can handle the topic, and don't try to change your mind or tell you how you're supposed to feel. So you can see the number of people who are available to you, and you get to decide who you want to reach out for any kind of information or support. And some people might surprise you. I have heard many stories of people who said, you know, people I thought I could count on just couldn't do it. They couldn't show up emotionally or even help in ways that I really had hoped they could. And then there were those people who came forward that I never would have expected could be so wonderful in my life and who actually could be with me in this experience and did offer a lot of support along the way. So you can, whoops, I went too far. So, as we think about this, be thoughtful about who is in your inner circle and who can actually hold this experience with you in a kind, supportive, and a compassionate way so that you have a sense of knowing it's a safe place to be. Also, as we've talked about dying, we can't not talk about what it means to live. So while we are anticipating a major transition in our lives or the lives of other people that we know, we also need to remember that we're alive now. Today, we are alive. And so when we think about where we're going to put our attention, it's important to think about how we want to live in the meantime. What do you want with whatever time you have left? And how do you hope to be seen and heard and remembered? So, this question about how do you want to live until you die is absolutely probably one of the most powerful questions you can ask. Uh, I know there's a lot of fear of anticipating something you can't necessarily control, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what that would be like. But what you have is the present, is this moment with regard to what you can do now that actually brings you joy, brings you relief, helps you remember that you are very much still alive. So advocating for yourself and your needs, again, you don't have to settle for something that doesn't serve you or support you, whether it's relationships or activities that you feel like you had to do, but they really weren't very important or meaningful to you, and that you get real clear about that, that you're honoring them. You notice what you're not doing that you feel like you've always wanted to do or need to be doing. And this whole idea of a growth mindset, so that as you step into this experience, it opens a portal for you to really examine your life and decide what it is that is most meaningful for you now. You might be gathering more inspiration and insight from a variety of people or reading or other media that you might be exposed to. There's crazy stuff on Facebook, of course, but there's a lot of inspirational things that you might find show up there. There are wonderful videos and people who share great insights that you might say, yeah, that fits for me. That's helpful for me. And so the idea is then to open yourself up, be curious to what else remains in terms of your life that actually will bring you insight and growth and maybe healing, not necessarily in a physical way, but in an emotional way with regard to how you change your relationship to the past or other people in a way that allows you to feel more at ease. And this comment about we can't control the matter or the manner or timing of our own death, but we can definitely choose how we approach it. And so the power of choice is probably an incredible piece that many of us forget that we have, whether it's in how we die or how we live. And so this presentation, my hope is, will be for you to remember what those choices are, explore what those choices are, and that you have an ability to exercise that choice. So, why do we live? To experience everything. So, that means discovering what are your sources of love, joy, awe, creativity, and connection. And when something feels good, we feel relaxed and open, connected to ourselves and others. So the more we notice these moments, the more they seem to occur. And we also learn to live in between the experiences, that we notice, we pay attention, we're mindful, and that we probably are more present in our lives than maybe we've been before. There's a saying that says, when the motion stops, the emotion reveals itself. And so we get a sense of how do we actually feel about where we are in our life, about what we're observing or experiencing. And so as life slows down, we have more opportunities to step into that space and open up to new ways of seeing and understanding and learning. And we know that life lessons teach us a lot. And so we might reflect on what are those lessons in terms of how we got to be where we are, as well as how did that sadness and grief and pain, what did that teach us? What did that bring to us in terms of awareness? What is it maybe that we still are grieving. And that this is a time to be willing to talk about that, lay down some of those burdens, and actually reduce the suffering. There is an awareness that when we suffer ahead of time or we suffer about things we can't control, we actually increase the intensity of that suffering. And so, as we begin to understand and recognize where that suffering is coming from, we find a sense of relief so that we can be present in the moment and release some of that in terms of what is important now, how we can feel our own sense of wellness and wholeness, and maybe release some of that shame and guilt that we might have carried for a long time, knowing we did the best we could with what we had. We couldn't give what we didn't get necessarily. So, in terms of regrets that we might hold about wish we had done something better, and we have an opportunity to even forgive ourselves and ask for forgiveness from others. And some, we just learn what it means to be human. None of us are perfect. And we also learn how we have actually impacted others' lives in terms of being of service and part of something bigger. It's easy for us to step into the regret and wish we had done more. But what's important here is that we have done a lot. When we actually look at our life, we will see that hopefully, there are many places where we left our mark in a very positive and loving way, knowing that our life mattered. And hopefully was spent purposely and that we were thoughtful, at least now in this moment. So it's never too late in the sense of really investing in why we live and what it means for us and what we want to do to actually live in a way that feels authentic. So, part of that, in terms of living with authenticity and making choices about where we spend our time and our attention, is to really look at what we value and what's important now. Again, as I said earlier, a lot of people begin to recognize, oh, they've put off a lot of things in their life, and they've done a lot of things that they felt like they had to do, or they were obligated to do, or they were responsible for. And now they sort of put that in perspective with, yes, at the time that was really important. Now, is it as important? Someone, well, actually, several people have said to me, they feel like they had to keep working until the very end. And, that sense of, was their value in their life just about how they showed up for work and what they did in their work versus what other parts of their life needed attention or deserved some priority? And is it time to let go of some of those things that used to serve us but don't serve us anymore? So as we look about this in terms of each of these categories, how do you see yourself line up with regard to what do you value and what's important now? So these values and priorities actually inform every decision that we make when we are conscious and aware of how we were making them and what decisions we want to make and what we're asked to make in terms of choosing between one thing or another. So the time that we spend in really noticing, does this fit my values? Is this important now? Is really going to serve us well with regard to what the next days, years, and months will be like for you. And while cancer has robbed you of many things, there's still time in life when you can authentically do those things, that you actually honor what's true and important to you, so that you can also communicate that to others and they can help you honor those things. So all in all, survivors want to be heard. They want others to really know what their needs and preferences and sources of joy and comfort are. And caregivers want that for you as well. So noticing what that is for yourself, letting other people know, so that both of you are supporting something that you can control, that you do have some choices over, and will actually help you feel better and feel like your life is more meaningful. So you can look over a number of these things and you can decide for yourself, where do you want to start? It doesn't mean that you do all of them, but that you pick and choose the ones that are really important and meaningful for you to consider now. And it might be a matter of just choosing one or two things along the way that you want to really invest your time and attention in doing and evaluating. Sandra, do you have any other thoughts about this particular slide or this topic?
No, I think you covered that beautifully.
Okay. So here are some examples of what might bring you joy and meaning in your life. Uh, a big part of it is actually forgiveness. So it doesn't mean that you accept all of what has happened, either for yourself or what someone else may have done, but that you actually begin to let it go in a way that it doesn't create a burden for you, so that you have an opportunity to get some relief. There is a saying that says, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for someone else to die. So we might feel really justified in our resentment and our anger and decision not to forgive, but it really takes a toll on our spirit, on our mind, on our emotions. And this is an opportunity for you to create some space, free up some space for you to actually live more joyfully. So these pictures represent, travel, being in nature. There's so many studies out there with regard to the benefit of being in nature and how it calms our nervous system and actually can be very, very peaceful. Of course, travel or taking on creative things like art projects. Some people are learning to play the piano and doing things that they never allowed themselves time for, but it's really enjoyable for them at this time in their life. Obviously, reading and allowing yourself to sit in a comfortable place and just soak up the experience that you're in that's joyful. And so this particular slide, there are two of them that reveal a poem that Sandra brought to my attention that is really quite meaningful. And because we all face difficult times, it's important to recognize that we can experience life from both sides and decide where we want to place our attention at any one moment in time. So, what have your most difficult times revealed or taught to you, or taught you? In this poem, it reflects that dual reality. So, from the moment you were born, your death has walked beside you. We know we're mortal. Though it seldom shows its face, it still feels like it's empty, and it's a fear that invades your life. It's an inner experience, one that, as we think about it and approach it, has a powerful impact. And then it reminds us that we still have choice, that you gather yourself and decide carefully how you can live the life you would love to look back on, so that you look back on it from a place of appreciation and recognition for your accomplishments, as well as the experience of all of it in a way that really holds you in a place of recognizing you are so much more than this part of your life. There's so much more before you that is worth your time, your awareness, your recognition, both for yourself and for those that love you. So many people wonder if they'll be remembered and how they'll be remembered. And this is an opportunity for you to know that how you remember your life has as much importance in terms of who you are as a whole person. So part of what we find is that it's difficult to find opportunities for peace in the midst of all of this turmoil. So we talked a lot about the impact of anxiety and uncertainty and how that leaves us pretty churned up and unsettled. And it's hard to move beyond that. And of course, those experiences that are so intense are not going to be ones that are resolved in a very quick or easy way. They may take different or require different steps, may involve more people that are supportive, that provide additional tools, and also witness the story that maybe needs to be told that hasn't been told. And so a lot of it is letting go in addition to creating a space for peace. So letting go of the sources of suffering and pain and worry and concern, and then creating a space for peace. So one of the things that you might hear us say over and over is to really live with intention. The sense of knowing you're alive, how do you want to live while you're living? And then what connections are important for you to create or resume or retain in a way that really feeds your spirit, really feeds your soul. So these are the common themes that we believe will benefit you. And we hope that you consider how you might use them and be able to actually experience what it's like to be have peace. A lot of people live very chaotic lives, very busy lives, and it's hard to know what peace feels like because we're so used to so much energy that comes around doing a lot of things or being very busy. And so here we have an opportunity to actually feel what it is to be calm and peaceful. And for some folks, that's really uncomfortable because they've not allowed themselves to be in that space before. But as your life slows down and as you have more space to think about these things, these are some options that you might explore for yourself. So again, being open and curious about what would provide me an opportunity for some peace? What is it that I can do that would allow me to be kind and forgiving to myself? How do I learn to trust that I have the right to ask for what I need and that it's possible to actually get what I need and ask for it from others? And to be thoughtful about who do you want to be with? You know, who are those people that fill you up, that feed your soul, that actually allow you to feel like it's fun to be alive or it's meaningful to be alive, that are willing to talk about deeper things that maybe hasn't been explored or shared before. And also just to have fun sharing memories of those silly fun times, as well as the times that were most challenging. And of course, to remind yourself that you are doing hard things and you've done hard things. Also, just the idea of gratitude and appreciation. There actually is a process called heart math. I don't know if any of you heard of it, but you might explore it. It's called heart math. And it was initially devised to help people who were in war or experienced trauma to be able to calm themselves and do what's called complete the stress cycle. And what they found is that holding a memory of love and gratitude and appreciation, just holding that in memory and sort of stepping into that is actually incredibly calming for our nervous system in terms of reducing stress. So having just those moments when you can really allow yourself to reflect on times when you really had a great deal of joy or an experience with someone that you greatly appreciated, or just the sense of being where you are, appreciating your garden, your home, the places you visited, the experiences you've had. And then, of course, you know, we talked about releasing regret and shame and resentment. But the big thing is also living your bucket list to say, wow, what is it I want to do that allows me to feel like I'm doing what I want to do rather than constantly putting it off or telling myself, I don't get to do that. And then connection, so powerful with regard to how we connect with ourselves, whether it's through talking with others, praying, meditating, being in nature, of course, being present. We've talked a lot about the importance of that. We can't control the past or the future, but we can be fully present and we have choices and options now. And the sense of just continuing to ask, what is it that would bring me joy now? Uh, Sandra was sharing that a lot of times in the support groups, people are recommending to each other, survivor to survivor, to do one thing a day that brings you joy. And so, what might that be for you is actually giving yourself permission to do that and having that sense of, yes, that feels good. And knowing that that's always available to you, even in the smallest way. So there may be options that you think about in terms of just listening to beautiful music. It may also be getting a massage or having some tender touch or eating a really delicious meal or having a sense of being in nature and being maybe as simple as looking at pictures or looking out the window, whatever it is that you think can actually feel good and joyful. And here's a quote that might help you put all of this in perspective. And it is the sense that death and dying is a major transition and change. And all of our life is in the process of changing every day. The person you are now and the things you're able to do now are different than they were last week or last year or 10 years ago. So understanding that life is a path of change and that it is a combination of all the feelings, ecstasy and ache, and allow yourself to find the light in the midst of all of that and let that lead you in a very kind and tender and compassionate way. So, in summary, facing our mortality is an opportunity to reconcile your life. And so, knowing that it's a part of life, it's hard to talk about, but it still holds a lot of meaning for you. And so is the grief, the sense of, yes, there are things that are lost and there are things that are gained. And the grief needs you to honor it, allowing you to express it, to recognize it, to understand the source of it, and to give yourself room to feel all of that. It's important as you go forward to state your preferences and do what you can to honor them. So, making a plan, a lot of anxiety is resolved when the worry that we hold spins and then has a sense of, okay, what am I going to do with that? I'm worried about pain at the end of life, for example. What are my options to manage the pain? And getting assurance from your medical team on palliative care or hospice about how is that managed? And the sense of, okay, I'm worried about what's going to happen to my spouse or my children or my home or whatever. Okay, what is it I need to do to address that worry? What will help me know that there's a way to manage it so that I can exercise control and choice where it is available to me? And of course, living fully while you're living, doing what matters most and not putting it off. The reality is, whether we have a serious illness or not, we still are mortal. And having the opportunity to say, I'm doing my life in real time. I'm doing what's important today because I don't know how many tomorrows I will have. That's true for me. It's true for Sandra. It's true for all of us on this webinar, as well as anyone else that we're encountering in life. This is also an opportunity to heal the emotional suffering. There are a lot of people who have experienced trauma in their life, often early in childhood, but also along the way. And learning to heal and finding ways to make peace with it are so important with regard to providing us relief and opening us up to more opportunities for peace and healing in a different way. So where we might not feel we can heal our body, we can heal other parts of our life and our relationship to the past. Of course, saying what is necessary to help you say goodbye, doing and saying. So there's a book called Four Things That Matter Most, and it's going to be listed in the resources, that talks about the importance of every day saying, I love you, thank you, I forgive you, and please forgive me. And those messages came from interviewing over 800 people who were facing the end of their life and asking them what did they think was necessary to happen before they could peacefully say goodbye. So knowing that that's, again, something we need to pay attention to every day, even though that book was written with regard to people who were facing their life at the end of their life, it's true for all of us. Again, the sense of we are mortal, and those kinds of messages and things that give us a sense of, oh, okay, we've taken care of what's important to do. And then, of course, exploring your strategies as far as, how would I manage my pain? How can I reduce my suffering? What helps me be with my sadness and release it, let it move through me and out, acknowledge what has been difficult, and be able to release it in a way that we feel like, yes, that's happened. And here I am now, and I am going to focus on what it is that will bring me joy in this moment. So, again, it's a matter of we get to have both the sense of what has been painful and the sense of what is still joyful and what remains in our life that is meaningful. So, as we thoughtfully cultivate peace, know that you're loved. Know that there is an opportunity for you to be able to express and be loved, as well as the sense that comes with just being with people who are in that space with you with regard to feeling connected and knowing that they understand you, they hear you, and that you can also be with yourself and you can know what it means to even love yourself. And all of the parts that feel messy is still to be able to rest in the sense of you have the right to be here. You've lived a life that has been filled with everything, and that it still matters. It's still important. It doesn't have to be perfect in order to be meaningful. And for you to still make room for yourself to enjoy that sense of peace and comfort that comes with living a life that's full and one that's thoughtfully on time in terms of being present. So let's take this time to answer and explore some of your questions. The slides that follow that you'll get a copy of will have more resources, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in detail if you have time. So let's go ahead and open it up. You can unmute yourself, and if you've posted some questions in the chat, we can certainly go over those with you, and Sandra can share them. So what's on your mind? How has this been for you to talk about this, and what is still on your mind?
Here's the view. I just want to thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. You have a beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you.
I think you should do some meditation tapes.
Actually, I have for
Have you
some
really?
individuals. Yes, I have.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was all really good information. I got a few good quotes out of it and wrote down a few things to look up online. And I don't think I have any questions particularly other than, well, when you talk about pain control, I'm sure I ain't seen nothing yet, but um, uh, they seem to be opposed to giving old people opioids because they're addictive.
Mhm.
And I figure, who cares? We're old. What difference does it make if we're going to be addicted to them until we die?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yes, you're in good company with that. That's when I worked in the cancer clinic, that was often a topic with regard to whether people had a history of addiction and whether these medications could contribute to that or
Mhm.
inspire that in some way. But for people who are really knowledgeable about pain control, so this is where your palliative care and hospice care team will come in,
Uh,
is they know how to administer the medication that matters in terms of providing you comfort and relief. And these discussions around addiction have some biases about it with regard to the medical team. There's been a lot in the news with regard to overdoses
mm,
and opioid addiction because the prescriptions were not always issued uh, very thoughtfully or safely to individuals, and it sort of skewed the perspective with regard to, is it okay to
yeah.
prescribe too many? And of course, there's always the risk of diversion, which is unfortunate, where someone else takes the person's medication. And so there's
Oh,
attention to, if people are using more than what's expected, there's a question about, is that happening? And some people sell them. So there are a lot of things that come into play with regard to
mm,
how the medication is delivered and what the medical team is thinking about as they're writing those prescriptions. But, for people who are taking them and need them legitimately, um, I think that's where you continue to advocate for yourself, and your family advocates for you, that they're being consumed properly and with the right purpose in mind.
mm,
The other piece with regard to opioids is that it causes constipation, and that in itself can be quite painful.
mm,
So there's some thoughtfulness with regard to which medications and how much you're taking in that regard as well. But there usually are a number of options with regard to pain control that can be discussed with you in terms of what's appropriate for you. But yeah, that's a little bit of behind the scenes about what the
yeah,
medical
that all
teams
makes
are
sense.
thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandra, I'm sorry. Sandra, do you have other thoughts on that in terms of your experience with hospice and palliative care?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it nicely. When we're working with our specialist or our oncologist or primary care doctors, they do seem to have a lot of bumpers on their prescribing ability. And what I saw in the palliative care, and of course hospice, it's as though their qualifiers became wider, and so they became more generous because they established the relationship with their patients and really
Mm-hmm.
understood the pain and really understood the difficulty breathing. And they were really skillful at prescribing and hearing really what the patient's needs were at just a higher level than the specialist had time for or had expertise in. So
Mm-hmm.
I, again, feel like palliative care and hospice care are experts at pain and symptom management.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add something that came to mind that actually I have talked a lot about with individuals. Uh, Pain is so personalized and subjective that, a prescribing physician or medical team can't really appreciate or understand what your pain level is. Uh,
Mm,
but on the other side of it, we have sort of become a medication-dependent society or culture that says if we have pain, just take it away. And we sort of want that outside intervention that says, just give me something and supersize it, and then I'll be fine. But we sometimes forget that there are things that we personally can do that also reduce our pain. Number one, if we are experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety, we will always have more pain because the physiological response to stress in our body is to tighten up our muscles, to affect every aspect of our digestive system, our physical being. And so when we talk about cultivating peace through meditation, enjoyable activities, massage, anything that relaxes us and brings down that intense stress, even breathing, that breathing exercise we talked about at the beginning, is so important with regard to what else we can do to manage the pain. Also, acupuncture has been a nice intervention. I've experienced that personally myself in terms of some shoulder and knee injuries. And so there are other things other than the opioids, which I can't even say very well, that can also help relieve pain. But managing the impact of stress on our body is a key component of that.
Thank you.
Yes. What other questions might you have?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm on at least you showed about the preferences and plan.
Mm-hmm.
And on this, oh no, I lost it. And you mentioned, the different forms, advanced directives, and you have the MPOA, I don't know what that is. I know the most form, 5 digits and so. But what I missed actually is MAID, MAID, medical aid in dying.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So why didn't you mention that one?
We did with regard to that it is a process of making that choice, that it's not one that you make on the spot, that there is an evaluation process that involves confirmation that you do have a progressive illness, and that there is a determination about, are you making this decision in a healthy frame of mind rather than a reactive one?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this long process. And so you are saying with these other ones, yeah. Oh, well, let's put it like that. MAID has the longest evaluation process, basically.
Yes, and an important piece to know is that medical aid in dying is legal in Colorado, and a lot of people want to explore it. But the number of people who begin the process and actually take the medication drops drastically. So there is a large number of people who explore it, who might start the process of evaluation, excuse me, all the way to actually getting the medication, but then may decide not to take it. The important piece to know about medical aid in dying is that a person has to be able to administer the medication themselves. It's usually a liquid, kind of a thick liquid, and that it's not something anyone else can give to them. So that's an important consideration, because some people think that, for example, if they have serious MS or Lou Gehrig's disease and they actually physically cannot lift something up to their mouth, or they can't swallow, that someone else can give it to them, or they give them a shot, for example. That is not the case.
Yeah, it's very important that this is all clear up front. I've witnessed several times friends of mine who were doing it, and also some, as you said, had it, that gave them the peace of mind. They could have the choice,
right?
But they didn't use it because they had the choice.
Yes.
and the fear of pain was not so much in the forefront anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we have a resource, a connection to learning more about it. That's part of the slides.
Okay.
So there are some myths and misunderstandings that can be clarified in that information. One of them also is that it can not be consumed or occur in a public place. So there are those kinds of considerations with regard to how it might unfold and actually be exercised.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm glad you brought up these acronyms. Unfortunately, in the medical world, we live in alphabet soup. And for those of us who are familiar with the terms, we don't think much about how it doesn't always make sense to everyone. But this MPOA is the medical durable power of attorney. So that essentially says that in the event that a person is not capable of making a medical decision themselves, they assign that right and authority to another person. The form itself in Colorado does not require that it is notarized or witnessed. So the form is easy to complete and it can be redone easily and readily. So with regard to the medical power of attorney, the important caveats to understand about that is there are two options with it. First of all, you can fill it out yourself. You don't have to have an attorney do it who can add, many more layers to it. But essentially, it means identifying a person who would make a medical decision for you if you are incapacitated, and only for the time that you're incapacitated is an option. So when you fill it out, it can say it's effective at the time of the signing, or it's only effective upon disability. So for example, if you undergo surgery and you're obviously not conscious, and a medical decision needs to be made in the middle of surgery, the medical power of attorney identifies the person who can help make that decision with the medical team. And then as soon as you come out of anesthesia, you are able to make your own decisions again. And that person is not called upon to make the medical decisions for you unless you fill out the portion that says that the authority is given upon signature. So those are important caveats with regard to the medical power of attorney. The most, and sometimes you might hear the post form, help me with this, Sandra, but I think it has to do with medical options for surgical treatment. Is that right?
No, I just looked it up. Medical order scope.
There it is. Yeah, there we go. So it has to do with a form that is filled out with your physician. It does include a DNR decision, so do not resuscitate. And it basically is similar to maybe the 5 wishes, with many people are familiar with it, that says in certain circumstances, what would you like to have done with regard to feeding tube, artificial nutrition, and fluid, all kinds of things like that. And then including if your breathing or heart would stop, do you want to be resuscitated? The important considerations for the DNR and the artificial feeding or hydration are these things. And Sandra, you can fill this in with me as well. So with DNR, the percentage of people who recover without serious deficit is really small for people who are elderly and severely compromised in terms of their physical well-being. So it actually can be quite harmful. Ribs can get broken, further breathing can get compromised, and people might be on artificial breathing machines, things like that. So DNR is a really important consideration for people whose bodies are really already quite frail. The statistics are not in the favor of having a healthy recovery from it. So that's sort of the hard truth about it. The other piece with regard to feeding tubes, artificial nutrition and fluid, is that as our body is dying, it cannot process food or fluid well. And what happens is if the person is continually given artificial feeding or fluid, what happens is that third spaces. So it goes into the other tissues, but it really isn't digested. And so that can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people. I don't know if you've ever recovered from surgery and they continue to give you IV fluids more than what you need, and you find yourself kind of bloating up because you have much more fluid than your body actually can process. So it's similar with regard to when our bodies are shutting down, it really does not benefit from additional nutrition, artificial nutrition or fluid. Sandra, do you want to say anything more about that? Did I get that right?
No, you did. And the statistics for recovery for CPR, the palliative doctors would say you have to be pretty healthy to recover from CPR. And so when you take someone who's near the end of life or has a chronic disease and you put them through, CPR, they may recover, but they're going to come back still with the cancer and everything that went, is now a challenge with the broken ribs and the compressed lungs. And the statistics, I believe, the last we talked was 16% recovery rate from CPR. And for those in a nursing home or assisted living, the rates were down to 4%. So that's just worth a consideration, and the most form would allow you to have this conversation with your doctor, and the most form requires a conversation with your doctor or provider with their signature.
And all of these forms can be revised. So when you create any of these, especially these advanced directives, you can tear up one and create a new one. The important thing is that the right people get the most current copy. Some people actually will post them maybe on their bed or have a file near their bed or in a place where it can be prominently found. Unfortunately, sometimes families don't like to honor them. And this is where it's really important to have that discussion with them and to appoint people as your medical power of attorney who will, in fact, honor your wishes and make decisions as if they were you, not them. And that's the important distinction in terms of who you select. Now you can list more than one person as your medical power of attorney, and it often is encouraged, so you always have a backup. But please know that they don't work in concert. It goes from the first choice. If that person is unavailable or unwilling to perform that role, it then goes to the second person. So it's not a community effort. I had one family one individual who listed 7 members of their family on this document. And it was really important to clarify that all 7 did not have to agree. It's the first person or second person, whatever the succession is in terms of holding that role. Again, the takeaway is choose people that will honor your wishes, not impose theirs. Okay. Does that help answer your question, Evelyn?
Yes, thank you.
Nice.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Liz.
Hi, Liz.
You said something about don't bring in a death doula at the last minute, which of course makes sense, but when should you be looking into something like that? Because we don't know when we're going to die.
Right. Well, this is a helpful discussion with your medical team with regard to asking about prognosis. And also, as you evaluate how effective your treatment has been, I imagine there are some of you on this call that have had recurrences. You've had to do maybe second, third line of treatment in terms of chemo or intervention. You may be on a clinical trial. And as you move down the levels of treatment options, there may be, and often is, what we would call efficacy question. How effective is it? So the effectiveness of treatments as you move down the line of options usually becomes less. And so then there is this decision with regard to how do I manage my quality of life and how do I advocate for what I need along the way? So with the palliative care, that discussion is ongoing. They're always going to ask you, what do you value? What's most important to you? How do you want things to go? And they will help you advocate for that. Hospice is also going to be focused on, now that you've stopped treatment, so you may have gotten to that point where the treatment is more painful and less effective than is worth your quality of life that you value. So people will decide then, okay, no more treatment. And the doctor can help you know what's your prognosis. Usually with hospice, prognosis of 6 months or less is required to qualify for hospice. But as Sandra said, some people do so well in hospice that they extend it and they can move beyond that and have, another 6 months approved. So those pieces are going to be an individual decision, and you can move in and out of it. There are some people who start on hospice and then decide they want to do more treatment, and so they'll get off of hospice for a time. So you have some flexibility. It's not an all or nothing with regard to one and done. You get to move through these decisions and change your mind about them and when. With regard to a death doula, a lot of people will choose a death doula when they know that they have a prognosis of 6 months or less. So very similar to hospice, but this is a real individual one-to-one kind of partnership, if you will. So this is someone that not only checks on you physically, but really talks to you about all of these choices and helps you exercise and put together a plan for how you want things to unfold, and even a backup plan with regard to what is needed. So they're really with you on more of a one-to-one basis, whereas with hospice, you're going to have a team of people. You're going to have the medical team, you'll have a CNA, you may have a music therapist, a physical therapist. They may offer all kinds of art and legacy project activities. And so you have a whole team with hospice. With death doulas, it's more one-to-one. Now, I don't know the experience of having a hospice and a death doula. I would think they would maybe conflict with each other a bit because they might have different agendas or goals. And I don't know, Sandra, if you have any thoughts about or experience with having both, but usually people choose one or the other.
Yeah, that's correct. I've never in my career had exposure to a death doula. It feels like a kind of newer evolution of addressing end of life needs in a different way.
Yeah. Well, we are at the 7:30 hour. Sorry to rush through these slides, but I don't have another way of getting past them. Are there any really pressing questions that we can answer quickly? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay. And you can see our information here. So please know that you can reach out to Sandra or me later on afterwards. We'd be happy to address other questions or speak with you by phone or Zoom and talk with you about other things that are on your mind. Also, you're going to be receiving the slides afterwards along with the evaluation form, but you can also see that the evaluation form is here and that